Hey guys, welcome back to Flat Cap Euro Talk here, and I'm pretty sure you guys might enjoy this video. I've done kind of a big best and worst players for each Premier League club for the 2021-22 season. Just one player that I thought was the best in their side, and then one player that I thought was the worst in their side. Kind of just plenty of hot takes, so I'm pretty sure plenty of you can call me out for the ones that I've done. I kind of did it in a more of an organic sort of way where you just I went through each Premier League team through the table, and the one that just came to mind immediately was more or less usually the one that I went for. I still verified with the stats and everything, but I kind of went about it that way because instead of going with maybe just looking at stats and then judging it that way, I kind of just went by my instincts. And so I am going to go about it in alphabetical order. Maybe just makes it easier in case you guys want to skip past some. But let's get into it. So the best player for Arsenal this season, in my eyes, was probably Bukayo Saka. I mean, I think he basically led this team single-handedly to the position that they got. Probably didn't show up in the last few games, but they would be nowhere near, in my eyes, where they were without him. I know people would say Odegaard, but I think Saka at the end of the day was the one scoring the goals and getting the assists. So for me, it's him. Nicola Pepe, I mean, he's cost more than Tanguy and Dembele. They weren't able to get rid of him in January. Seems like he doesn't want to be there. He's going to be an expensive person to get rid of. I find him to be probably useless to them. So, and he didn't really do much this season by the looks of it. So I'm going to declare him as the worst. It was kind of tough to pick their worst player, to be fair. In terms of Aston Villa, Matty Cash, it's just every time I look at Aston Villa, it feels like he's their best player in their games when they've been poor. During the Dean Smith era, I thought he was their best player. During this Gerrard era, which hasn't been much better than Dean Smith, to be fair, I still think he's kind of their best player. I'll go with Matty Cash. I think I could take this one wrong, though. I bet I am wrong about it. But the worst, definitely Leon Bailey. I mean, they bought him in for I think pretty big money, if I'm not mistaken. Not too much money, of course, but I'm pretty sure they brought him in for decent money. He hasn't exactly been injured for too much of the season. He just hasn't really played very much and hasn't been selected, hasn't really been starting, and he only had 3 goals and assists in 18 Premier or 18 matches across all competitions. And by the way, everybody, all these stats are, of course, across all competitions. So for me, it's going to be Leon Bailey. Um, Norgard, I think he basically was the reason they stayed up this season. I know Christian Eriksen, you can make a case for, but it is across the whole season that we're talking about. So I've gone for Norgard. He's also dominated a lot of stats of Premier League players this season. I'm a big fan of his. Alvaro Fernandez, their goalkeeper, I think has been the worst for Brentford because they had that one spell where they really fell off and they started losing a lot of games. And if I'm not mistaken, that was during that time period when they didn't have Raya, their main goalkeeper, available. So you could maybe say their backup keepers were the one that might have been the worst players this season, but I could be wrong about this one. I really could be. Brighton, I have to go with Kukurea, just one of my favorite players from this season. I think he's really had a spectacular sort of kind of breakout. I think he was exceptional the moment he came into the Premier League, but this has kind of been his big, kind of season where a lot of people have taken notice. He's played everywhere from left-sided center back to left wing to left wing back to left mid. I mean, he plays all over the pitch for them. He can clearly play all over the pitch. An exceptional player. Brighton's best player for me this season by far. Easily just their best player in general, if you ask me, and certainly has a huge future ahead of him. Adam Lallana, only 25 matches played across all competitions, only 1 goal and assist. I know he was kind of used more auxiliary, kind of like, bring off the bench sort of player, but I don't know. He's like 33, 34 or something like this. I just feel like he's just not giving you what you want someone to do in that Brighton team. So I would say get rid of Lallana, and I'm going to declare him as the worst player. It's tough sometimes to pick the worst player in my eyes. For Burnley, I've gone for Cornet. I mean, look at the fact that he had the most goal contributions, or at least the most goals scored in the Burnley team, despite not really playing that many matches across all competitions, only playing 28. Whereas Dwight McNeil, someone who I'm a really big fan of, I really like Dwight McNeil. I think it's actually someone who probably Spurs could take a look at in the future as like a left wing back, perhaps, because I do feel like that is a position that would suit him. 40 matches played, 1 goal and assist across 40 matches played. If they don't get relegated, if he had more goal contributions. So you actually kind of have to look at someone like McNeil, the fact that he played the most matches in the entire Burnley team. He's a huge creator for them. And the fact it's just such a poor tally for someone who's played, the most matches in the team and 1 goal and assist across all competitions. That's just poor. I mean, he's just got to do better than that. And probably the reason they got relegated, to be fair, is because that's such a poor tally. And I hate to say that because I love Dwight McNeil. Antonio Rudiger, 52 matches played. I think he had the most matches played of the entire Chelsea team. 5 goals and assists. He's actually scored some clutch goals for them this season too. A kind of a weird season for Chelsea, so I would just give it to Rudiger then because it's been such a weird season. In my eyes, he's just been kind of that player that often is the one that most opponents probably are kind of annoyed by or afraid of. So I've kind of given it to him there. But let me know what you think of that. And then in the case of the worst player, I've given it to Lukaku here. I mean, brought in for huge, huge money, everybody. And so you just have to look at that. Goals and assists, not even that many at the end of the day. Like that's combined contributions. And I think one of them was a penalty, but it's just poor. It's just poor. I think you just have to give it to Lukaku. Also caused like a lot of stir in the media and everything. And you could say that contributed to maybe the bad vibes in the dressing room and just the whole weird stir around Chelsea this season and probably just contributed to this weird season that they've had. So yeah, I'm giving it to Lukaku. Best player for Crystal Palace definitely has to be Conor Gallagher, and he also makes my Premier League team of the season. Enough said. Yeah, I don't even think I need to go much further than that. I mean, Crystal Palace would not have been such a crazy fun team to watch if it wasn't for Conor Gallagher, and he was probably the main reason why they lost maybe some games when he wasn't there. But I'm pretty sure he played majority of games. But Jordan Ayew, I just find him to be an impersonator of a footballer. Just never really rated him. 6 goals and assists across 34 matches played. He's just useless. They just need to get rid of him, if you ask me. So giving him the worst player. Best player for Everton this season, Richarlison. I feel like again, it's one of those situations where like has to do with the relegation fight. Like if Richarlison didn't have the season that he had and didn't score the goals that he did, especially clutch goals, like let's be honest. I mean, they go down, they get relegated. So you have to give it to Richarlison. And probably across the whole season, maybe the most consistent player wasn't really injured like a lot of the other players. They had a lot of injuries this season. So I've given it to Richarlison. I could be wrong. I know you could give it to the young kid, Anthony Gordon, but I kind of looked at the stats and everything to back it up. And it's just like as good as Anthony Gordon was, like they stayed up because of Richarlison's goals, if you ask me. Worst players has to be that defense. I mean, if anybody's seen how many goals they've conceded and just the ridiculous just defending mistakes, I mean, they're just a clown show. So Mason Holgate and Keane, I think they played the majority of the games for that defense this season. So I just got to give it to them as the worst players. I mean, I don't think there's any argument with that. Rafinha, definitely, again, like the only reason they stayed up has to do with the relegation argument. The only reason they stayed up is because of Rafinha with those goals and assists. I know other players had good seasons, but you just have to look at that guy, their most important player. Diego Llorente, definitely have to take a look at him because in his case, he actually, sorry, just charging the computer, it's about to die. Because in his case, like again, it's kind of similar to the Mason Holgate sort of argument and Keane argument. Like I just thought that they conceded so many goals this season, and I believe he's played the majority of the games of that back line. I could be wrong, and so you kind of have to look at him as the culprit of a lot of the goals they conceded. I know a lot of it has to do with Leeds, the way Leeds play, but I've still seen some pretty, atrocious mistakes made by this guy in particular. So I've given it to Llorente. Could be wrong about it, but I've given it to Llorente. Leicester City, James Madison. I mean, the numbers he's had this season, I don't think you can really dispute it. 35 matches played, 30 goals and assists. And again, something kind of similar here where they conceded a lot of goals this season, Leicester City. And Soyuncu was probably one of the more consistently available defenders in a very injury-ridden back line. So you have to give it to Soyuncu because he's just been the one most present for a lot of the goals they've conceded. And then Vestergaard they brought in this season, and it's just clearly been an atrocious signing. Like Brendan Rodgers doesn't know how to use him. Not really prepared, for this sort of like system. It's just a bad signing, and they just don't even like using him clearly, which just is it's just kind of shocking to be honest. So I've given it to him as one of the worst players. Mo Salah, not any question. I mean, look at those goal contributions alongside the matches played. And at one stage, people were talking every single day about how this guy's probably the best player in the world. So that's how good of a season Mo Salah has had. Especially in the beginning, or at least the first half. Joe Gomez, I mean, the guy just doesn't play. Like, so, and this was probably another big moment for him to try to get game time, and he just hasn't played. And Konate stepped ahead of him, and maybe they clearly have more faith in Konate than they do in Gomez. I would reckon Gomez is on the way out in the next season or two. It's just clearly maybe not good enough for that exceptionally good Liverpool team. Let's not get this wrong. An exceptionally good Liverpool team. But if he wants to develop into a team that can be able to into a player that can be able to make Gareth Southgate's squad, he's going to need to leave Liverpool in my eyes. But there you are. That was tough though to pick the one for Liverpool. For Man City, Joao Cancelo. I'm just a huge Joao Cancelo fan. I know there's a lot of bias in that. You could give it to Phil Foden. You could give it to De Bruyne. Plenty of players you can give it to, but I've given it to Joao Cancelo. He played the most games. He showed that he is basically the best left back in the Premier League. And probably one of the best players in the Premier League in general. He started off the season red hot and probably could have had a lot more goal contributions if you ask me. But just because of the various positions he had to play, the various types of roles he was playing in those positions, I think he kind of it got limited a bit. But yeah, I've given it to Joao. Just love him. Absolutely love him. Jack Grealish, bit of a hot take here, everybody, which I think will be funny. I mean, he just kind of look at the matches played, goals and assists. You're just underwhelmed. £100 million, like just not worth it, if you ask me. And Pep is, I know this is like the thing with Man City wingers. They go into there's that year where they kind of adjust and they develop into something better. Mahrez did it. All of them have done it, but I don't know. With Jack Grealish, it's been underwhelming. So you just have to look at this season alone, and kind of like Liverpool with such a successful season, so many good players. It's not like you can really pick many bad players in these teams. So I've gone for Jack Grealish, probably just because it was the most underwhelming. Let me know what you guys think, though. For Man United, this one was also very clickbaity, you could say, or whatever, or with what I've gone for. I've gone for Cristiano Ronaldo. I've gone with Kron, and the only reason is like I don't know if it's similar to this relegation argument, but I mean I don't feel like they finish in the Europa League if it isn't for the goals that Ronaldo scored. I mean the wins that he got them single handedly against us, especially that game we played over at Old Trafford. I thought we actually played a decent game. It's just Kron just absolutely destroyed us. So I think you just have to give it to him. And despite it being a really rough season for him, as well as the whole team, like he scored plenty of goals, still had, I think, the most goal contributions. Like you just have to give him, the best marks because Jadon Sancho, Rashford didn't show up. Plenty of the players in that front line didn't show up. It's just, you got to give it to Ronaldo then. Worst, I mean, Maguire, he's become a living meme this season. He's just lost all sort of confidence. Never liked him in the first place, especially after that Greek incident, where honestly, I think his true character showed, which is not a good person. If I'm going to be blatant about it, just don't like the guy. And I think he's had a shocking season and he's being exposed for maybe not being as good of a defender as people probably thought. Because as much as he maybe has been cut out to dry by Solskjaer and Rangnick. Like I think also sometimes though that's when like real defenders show their true ability, because if you can still look okay in a really bad defensive system, really bad organization, then maybe there's a player in there. Whereas with McGuire, he's just been exposed, and yeah. That's just my argument for it. Joe Linton. I mean, I kind of wanted to pick like another player but than Newcastle, but everybody's been talking about Joelinton at Newcastle, and like people have even gone as far to put him in their team of the season for the Premier League. So I guess I'm just going to put him in there. Jamal Lascelles, just didn't see him play very much for this team. They brought in Dan Burn. Fabian Schär has kind of taken his spot in the Eddie Howe team because Schär has much better kind of passing ability, I think, and much better just kind of decision making on the ball than maybe Lascelles, or it's just a bit more progressive on the ball than Lascelles. So it's kind of tough if you ask me, but it's tough to pick a Newcastle worst player, but I've gone with Lascelles. Matt Ritchie also sort of disappeared. That could be a shout as well. He definitely disappeared this season. Maybe he got injured. Matthias Norman, just the best player in that Norwich team, if you ask me. I think the one player that probably deserves to still be in the Premier League since they've been relegated. I hope people do go for him. I'd be disappointed if he had to play in the Championship because I think he's a decent player. So Matthias Norman, good it to him. Todd Cantwell, I mean, look at that. 8 matches played, goals and assists, none. This guy came up as some huge talent. Everybody was really backing him to be, an up and coming player. Didn't really know about him, to be fair, so I kind of just believed people when they said that. I didn't really talk about him too much, but I just believe people when they said that. And this season, as well as maybe last season too, has really exposed him as maybe where the hype was a bit too much, probably you could say, when it comes to Todd Cantwell. James Ward-Prowse, obviously the best player for Southampton. I mean, there's just no other way about it. Jan Valery, I think former Arsenal player, or could be on loan at Southampton. I'm not sure, but 11 matches played, 1 goal and assist. I think he's kind of a fullback slash defensive kind of fullback, center back or something. But I thought he had a pretty shocking season because he's barely even played. And I think you just have to look at that, as being the reason. Kyle Walker Peters, Livermento, clearly taking a spot. He's very young. He's had a lot of time to develop, and he's not really getting the opportunities, maybe because he isn't good enough. That's my thoughts on Valerie. Worst player there. For Spurs, Sonny, you just got to give it to him. I mean, Spurs have given it to him. I'm giving it to him. Best season I can recall of Sonny's career. It could even get better from here. Who even knows? But Sonny, top notch, dude. Top man. Class season. Dele Alli next, I think, to be fair, because this was the season where a lot of Dele fans were, maybe backing him, to make his comeback. He said, like, time and time again, season after season, I'm working hard to, try to, improve on, my previous, kind of poor displays. And this was the season where Dele Alli was his last chance. He's had last chance saloon multiple occasions. And this was finally the one where obviously it didn't, work out here. Sorry, everybody. It's getting a bit stormy now all of a sudden. But yeah, this was the one that clearly just for me, last chance saloon for Delhi. Couldn't do it yet again. Couldn't do it. So there you are, everybody. Worst player for me. Could have picked a lot of people for Spurs. Emmanuel Dennis, clearly one of the most valuable players in that Watford team, proved himself to be a good striker. I mean, the fact that he scored that many goals in a team like that is pretty sensational, if you ask me. And that team was pretty shocking. Danny Rose didn't play any games, proved to not be good enough again for the Premier League, and his just football career might just be over. So I've given him worst. And then Jared Bowen for West Ham scored a lot of crucial goals for them. Probably had more of a consistent season than the likes of the Mikel Antonio. Just a sec, everybody. I'm just going to close this window here. Probably had more of a consistent season than the likes of Mikel Antonio. Alex Kral, someone who I really liked and backed, but just didn't play any games at all. And I'm wondering if he'll play more next season. But yeah, just didn't play any games at all. Really disappointed about it, and I feel kind of bad for the kid. But yeah, definitely probably had the worst season because he just didn't get a single bit of game time. Jose Sa, obviously, because with Wolves, with how few goals they conceded, you just have to take them into consideration. And he's probably been an even better signing than even originally Rui Patricio was. And then Marçal, I've gone for there. Just because he didn't play that many games. He's getting old, and I feel like he's always hurt whenever he comes on. He's more of a defensive fullback, but he doesn't even look that great at being a defensive fullback anymore. I don't know. I've just decided to give it to him because Wolves have had a pretty good season, so it's hard to pick like a bad player for them. But there it is, everybody. That's it for now for picking all the best and worst players for the Premier League season in every club. Let me know what you think of this video. Drop that like if you enjoyed. Do drop that super thanks if you feel like supporting the channel. But plenty of content to still come. Just something a bit different from the transfers and whatnot that we're going to be doing plenty of. So let me know what you think of it. That'll be all for now, and I will be seeing you